accusing Rwanda for interfering in the internal affairs of Burundi. That is a very serious charge, because Rwanda happens not only to be a member of the same regional grouping, the East African Community, of which, of course, the Secretary General is a Burundi, beginning from this week. The people of Rwanda and Burundi, historically, pretty much are the same. You share the same culture. There was a time when I got a sense, frankly, that there was a very good chemistry between the two leaders, both one in Kigali and the other one in Bujumbura. What happened? What is Rwanda's motive in this? Is it about regime change, and if so, why?
You know, Shaka, the reality on the ground is there. The facts are there. Many weapons have been caught in cars coming from Rwanda. Reports are available. This is the reality. We have to focus on the means to solve the problem. Whatever what happened, the reasons, what is important today is to address this issue. And we continue to call Rwanda to stop feeding insecurity, because when your neighbor is having problem, it's not good. You have problem also, because you are brothers, you are neighbors, you are a member of family. And we have reached today a level of cooperation with some former insurgents. Roughly 30 of them testified on national TV how they were being recruited, where they pretended in Rwanda, how they
hold it, Ketty.
No,
You'll get your time. Hold it, Ketty, please.
Well, I don't
give me the opportunity. Please give me the opportunity to be the moderator.
I think democracy is also to listen to others. I listen carefully what the lady is saying. I should ask her also to listen to what I say, whether she agrees with me or not. This is democracy. You see, we have to learn how to work, how to react in the democracy. I was saying that some of them decided to surrender to the security forces when they realized that they've been manipulated by some politicians. So they are cooperating with the security forces in Burundi. They testified on everything, how they've been recruiting, when they've been trained, which type of weapon they received from Rwanda. And of course, when we have those kind of informations, it's very important to dismantle the network of the criminals. It's why today, on May 4, 2016, the security has decreased in Burundi.
But wait a minute, Mr. Ambassador. Someone might say that's not really the exact picture. Yes, people can be paraded in a television studio and say perhaps what they have actually been told to say. What about that? Were they in fact voluntarily making those statements, or had they in fact been intimidated and perhaps coerced to make those statements?
What is sure? There's reports. This is international made a report regarding the investigation in the camp in Rwanda. You have a report, a report to Security Council made by a team of experts at the University Council who came up with some insurgents coming from Rwanda through DRC when Rwanda realized that our border is high controlled. We have seen people attacking from Rwanda, and even diplomats in Bujumbura went in Kayanza to see them. So we have captured cars at the border full of weapons. So they are proof.
Interesting.
Proof and there.
Interesting.
The question today is to make sure that Rwanda take the right decision to stop feeding security. Because I think at the end, it's not in the interest of Rwanda to continue feeding security in Burundi, like what happened in the Eastern DRC in the past with CNDD of Nkundikije, M23, etc., etc.
Let me go to your colleague on Skype.
This agenda of destabilizing neighboring countries at the end, it's not good even for Rwandans themselves. So
Nivyabandi, by the way, first of all, let's face it, we are brothers and sisters here. Your name, for example, in my indigenous language, would pretty much mean the same thing, meaning you belong to others. Nivyabandi. In my language, that's the way it would be said. Having said that, let's just have a civil discussion because this is a family, really. Your reaction?
Thank you, Shaka. First of all, I would like to clarify, I do not belong to others.
But the name means something like, what about the name?
There are many interpretations, and I'm really not here to talk about the name. I find it very interesting that the ambassador is bringing up Rwanda today as the instigator of the crisis in Burundi at the moment. And it's a narrative that we are hearing a lot coming from Burundi government officials. I say that it's very interesting because they seem to have forgotten that Rwanda until 2015 was a great ally of Burundi. I remember that in, I believe it was 2008, Rwanda actually footed the bill of the Burundi government for its membership to the East African community of $1 million. When the markets in Burundi burned down, Rwanda sent a helicopter, and you seemed very pleased at the time. In 2010, when President Nkurunziza was sworn in, I believe President Kagame was the only president who attended. So very strange and very interesting, this sudden shift in diplomatic relations between Burundi and Rwanda, and why suddenly Rwanda would be having this interest to destabilize Burundi after years of great cooperation. The other question I'd like to ask is, in May 2015, was it Rwandans who were demonstrating in the streets of Burundi, asking for the constitution to be respected, for the Arusha Peace Accords to be respected? Was it Rwanda that shot those protesters, or was it Burundi? And therefore, beginning a spiral of violence and of repression. Is it Rwanda that is torturing opposition members and anyone who thinks differently from the government? You mentioned earlier, Mr. Ambassador, that the majority of Burundians do not want Nkurunziza to be in power. Then if you are so confident in the majority that you have, that your party has, why silence the opposition as you have had? Why shoot members, why kill, why abduct, why murder members of the opposition? And not only them, but also human rights defenders. Why threaten human beings, regular civilians like myself, for instance, who is currently a refugee because of this? I would like to remind you that I was tear gassed by your own eye, a woman who went there with no weapon, with only my bare hands, and I was with the women who were, some of them were 70 years old. Why repress us? Why tear gas, simple civilians, your own civilians, if you are so confident in the power that you have, in the majority that you have, and that it just doesn't add up at all. So again, I would like to emphasize that this is Mr. Ambassador, I almost actually feel I empathize with you as a human being, having to come here and defend the indefendable. Because what is happening in Burundi, as we have talked about many, many times, is being done by men in uniform. It's documented. Sadly, there is a blackout. There's only little information that's coming out because, again, all institutions that defend human rights have been kicked out of the country, or they have been closed, or people have been jailed. So it's what we see is only the tip of the iceberg. Only the tip of the iceberg. I receive photographs every day and messages every day of people who are trying to flee, and these are regular people. I have met protesters who were shot, who were amputated, and who were shot by the police. I met them myself. Young men who went to the streets to demand change, and now you're silencing everybody. In what name? I don't know. If that is democracy, then we need to redefine democracy. What the repression that is happening today? I think the closest thing that to me it reminds me of. The Tiananmen repression in 1989 in China, where you have an attempt from the people to say no, this is not right. This is we must respect our laws, and a total repression, most brutal repression for, ongoing for years, silencing everybody. This does not honor you, doesn't honor and it doesn't honor Burundi, and it is not a symbol of leadership. And lastly, when you say that, for the past 10 years, the President Nkurunziza has brought Burundi together, I would like to remind you, Mr. Ambassador, that as we sit today, Burundi has now fallen to be the poorest country, according to the IMF. It's not only is it the poorest, it's also the hungriest in the world. Quite an achievement, indeed. And then again, we wonder why people are standing up and saying, saying no. And again, they do so with the limited means that they have. They still do so peacefully. Can I remind you that for the first time in the history of Africa, in the history of protest in Africa, Burundian protesters for a very long time were not harming we're not vandalizing anyone, we're not harming any shots. There were a very few incidents including one man who was burned, which is extremely unfortunate. But when you look at the violence that was inflicted on these protesters that continues to be done, it's really, yes, time is not our best ally. I know, Shaka.
Yes. Let me ask you one question, and please, I want a very short answer. You talked, of course, about last year's protests in the streets. You probably remember that, among other things, the protesters said, if President Nkurunziza wanted to be a life president, he should go to Uganda. To what extent is President Yoweri Museveni acceptable to you as a mediator?
I find it difficult. And, again, thank you for giving me the opportunity to broaden this beyond Burundi.
30 seconds, please.
Into the region. This is a pattern. It's not only in Burundi. It's a very contagious disease that we are having of presidents who hang on to power. It's happening in DRC. It's happening. We saw what happened during your elections in Uganda. It's happening in Congo-Brazzaville. It's going to spread. And unless we step in and put a final stop to it and stop tiptoeing around these dictators as if they are monsters we are afraid of, then this is going to spread, and we are back to the years of full-blown dictatorships that we had in the 70s. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have to give the ambassador the last word. In fact, before that, I can ask you this question. The World Happiness Report of 2016 update ranks Burundi as the world's least happy nation. Are you aware of that? Why?
Yeah, I'm aware of that. I have a background of sociologist. It depends on how the investigation was made. It's a cultural issue. The issue of happiness is cultural. So if you ask the same questions in Uganda, in Sri Lanka, in France,
in Afghanistan,
for sure you will
in
have
Iraq,
in
Syria,
different,
in North Korea,
you have different responses. You have to adjust questions, tailor-made questions, considering the culture of a given country. So this is very important. So regarding what Ketty said,
you have 40 minutes.
Yes.
40 seconds.
Such a narrative, really, such narrative can convince only people who don't know Burundi. There is yet on the fact when people are throwing grenades, killing innocent people, targeting leaders, and they're claiming at the same time that they are demonstrating peacefully. It's a very strange notion of demonstration. So,
you want to see my
very
pictures?
Important.
Please.
May I like to continue? It's very important to know that such a narrative, such a process of denying institutions, denying the constitution, changing it with very means, must have an end. We suffered from that.
Unfortunately, Mr. Ambassador, time happens not to be our best ally.